What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though the Stanley Cup Finals start in 2 days, and I'm going to have my full preview and prediction on that tomorrow, 30 out of the 32 teams are currently in the offseason. And the offseason, the biggest events, the draft's in 3 weeks, free agency's in 3.5 weeks on July 1st. So we got to start talking about that. And when looking at the restricted free agency market, there is still some very big names. So today I wanted to go through these guys. I think for the most part, outside of like 2 of the 15 guys that I'm going with, these guys are probably going to resign. Restricted free agents, you don't see a ton of offer sheets. You see occasionally some guys get traded because of cap situation. Looking at a guy like Marty Necas on that. So I'm going to go through 15 of the biggest, in my opinion, restricted free agents this summer and predict their contracts. Do I think they're going to sign a 2 to 3 year bridge deal? Do I think they're going to go long 6, 7, 8 years? We're going to dive into that right now. So without further ado, let's go through my biggest 15. And up first, we got a 2-pack. We got a duo. We got Raymond and Seider. And I'm going to go the same deal for both of them. I think that the Detroit Red Wings they should, and hopefully they will, lock up both of them long term. I'm saying an 8-year, $8.5 million deal for both. Kind of like Parisi and Suter. Don't want that outcome in terms of them getting bought out of the final years of their contracts, but I think their value is about the same. Moritz Seider, although maybe doesn't have the impressive offensive totals that you expect from a number one defenseman, has been playing the toughest minutes in the entire NHL, basically for the last 2 years, and posting around 40 points, 50 points in his rookie year. He's a legit number one defenseman. Pay him as such. And when you look at the comparables, although I think Jake Sanderson is better going forward, Seider is far more proven than a Jake Sanderson and definitely than an Owen Power. Sanderson got 8.04. Power got 8.25 or 8.35. So I think a good sticking point for Moritz Seider is $8.5 million. And when looking at Lucas Raymond, this year, 31 goals, 41 assists, 72 points. He was already a $7.58 million player. I think you lock him up instead of, given where the Red Wings are, not saying they don't want to make the playoffs next season, but I don't really see the point of signing these guys to Bridges, because even Bridges for them would still be 3 years, $6.57 million. You wouldn't really be saving that much money. So I think they should just lock them up, considering the Red Wings' actual contending window probably does open up between 2027 to 2031. Right now, they're a competitive team, but it's not like when you think about a bridge deal, you think about a competitive team that wants to keep these guys cost controlled for the next 2 to 3 years while they go for Stanley Cups. I don't think Detroit is quite there. So lock them up. So then come 2027 to 2031, those guys are well below market value, considering the fact it's only $8.5 million and the cap is only going to continue to rise. Next up, Marty Necas. Martin Necas, I think, is going to end up getting traded, and I think wherever he goes, he's going to sign like a 4-year deal at around $7 million. I'm not sure someone's going to give him like a long-term deal, but I think a healthy $7 million, and Carolina just can't afford that right now. And when looking at Necas, last year, 70 points. This year, a bit of a step back, 24 goals, 29 assists for 53 points, but this guy is still a very good second liner at this point, and he's only, 24, 25 years old, and I think on most teams he might factor into that first line, so someone's going to give up a decent amount in terms of a trade package and lock him up to a long-ish mid-term deal, 4 to 5 years at around $7 million. We got a goalie, and we're going with UPL, and this is a very weird one because this season was quite bipolar. First 3 months, October, November, December, pretty disappointing, like around an .897 save percentage. Then from January and all the way through March, he was like the best goalie in the entire NHL. He was sporting like a .928 save percentage in the calendar year of 2024. Last month of the season wasn't that good, but ended up finishing with a .910 save percentage, 2.57 goals against, and Buffalo really wasn't that good of a team this season. I don't think they're going to give him some massive deal, but I think they're going to pay him pretty well. 3 years, 4.5 maybe million dollars, because I still think Devin Levi is probably their goalie of the future. Levi's only, 22 at this point? Like, he's still very young, still very promising. But UPL heading into next season is going to be the starter for this team. So I think he gets paid legit starter money at $4.5 million. Let's say, but he doesn't really have the track record to garner like legit $5-6 million, even though he is young. In previous years, he just wasn't that good for the most part. So I think UPL is going to get some security, but Devin Levi is still the goalie of the future for the Buffalo Sabres, but Devin Levi needs to play better in his own right, so I think that's pretty fair. Next up, Cole Perfetti. Perfetti's in a weird spot considering he got healthy scratch for the first 4 games of the series against Colorado Avalanche, so I think this is going to be a pretty small bridge deal. It's going to be like 2 years at 2.5, now I'll go 2 years at $3 million, just because this guy did have 19 goals, 19 assists for 38 points this season, but it just seems like Rick Bowness doesn't trust him. So by far the guy that's going to get paid the least out of anybody on this list just because of the playoff situation that he had. So I'm going to go 2 years, $3 million for Cole Perfetti. I think that he will break out if he does get more ice time. Let's hope that Scott Arniel likes him a lot more than Rick Bowness, but Arniel was Bowness's assistant, so I don't know how likely that is. Next, Thomas Harley. Now, this is a very interesting one because Dallas could go long-term, but I think this is a situation, unlike Detroit, where a bridge might be best given the circumstances. I talked about it before in my Dallas video. I talked about what I think they should do in the offseason. I'm going to go 3 years at $6 million. Still a healthy $6 million considering this guy did have 47 points. He doesn't have a track record like some of the other restricted free agents. This was his only first full year in the NHL. But Thomas Harley, you get him for the next 3 years at a relatively low cap hit. I don't think that his price is going to skyrocket like a Moritz Seider might in a couple years, considering Harley's still going to be behind Miro Heiskanen, and a guy like Seider, if you bridge him, then he keeps on breaking out. You could be looking at $10.5, $11 million. So when looking at a Thomas Harley, I think Dallas is going to bridge him, and that would put him on the same timeline as Tyler Seguin's deal, paying him $9.8 million the next 3 seasons. So once Harley comes up, you have some more money. You plan accordingly with some of your bad contracts per se, because you can't really buy out Tyler Seguin because that buyout's an absolute mess. Matty Beniers, very interesting circumstance considering last year, 57 points. You think they should just lock him up right now in the summer, give him an 8x8, 8.5, but this year, not really the case. Had a big step back for the Seattle Kraken this year, only 37 points in 77 games. So I think for both parties, a bridge deal is probably best. For Beniers, you know that you can return back to that 57-point form while being very, very good defensively. And for the Seattle Kraken, I don't think you're ready to give. If they were going to do a long-term deal, rightfully so, Beniers is still going to want $7.75 million. But if I'm Seattle, I'm not really committing to that. So I say a 3-year deal at $5.75 million. The Trevor Zegras numbers, I think it just makes sense. He's still a good middle six forward at this point for a Seattle team that's trying to be competitive. And then in 3 years, if he breaks out, fantastic. And then you lock him up on an 8x9, it'd be best for both parties. Another guy that's pretty interesting, Sean Durzi. Sean Durzi very much broke out this year for the Arizona Coyotes, now the Utah Hockey Club. But when looking at Durzi, I'm going to go with a 5-year deal at $6.25 million. Decent top pair money. When looking at Sean Durzi, he had 42 points this year for the Arizona Coyotes in around 77 games. He was their number one. They're kind of their by default number one. Do I think he's going to be their future number one? No, you're not going to give him legit number one money. He is at this point 25 or 26 years old, but he's a very good top pairing, or at least very, very good second pair offensive defenseman. So I think $6.25 million in the next 5 years covers him from between the ages of 25 to 30. You're getting him for his prime. He's already worth around that $6 million mark. So I think that's a pretty fair market value deal for both parties. Quinn Byfield's a very interesting name when looking at this, considering LA does have a little bit of an older core, so I think I am going to go with a bridge deal of 3 years, $6.8 million. When looking at Quinn Byfield, this was his breakout year. He doesn't have that much of a track record, but after having 20 goals, 35 assists for 55 points, he definitely earns a pretty healthy salary on a bridge deal, playing with Kempe, playing with Kopitar this season. And when looking at LA, akin to what I explained with Dallas Stars, Tyler Seguin, 3 years left on his deal, I think the LA Kings, Drew Doughty has 3 years left at $11 million. That's obviously going to come massively down because he's going to be 36, 37 when that contract's up. So I think you time him up with that, on top of the fact, the LA Kings need some money if they want to compete in the next 2 to 3 years. So instead of giving Byfield the Raymond 8 by 8.5, maybe even Byfield's case, 8 years, $9 million. I think you go with more of a bridge deal at around 3 years, 6.8, maybe $7 million. Jeremy Swayman. The price has skyrocketed since the start of this year, considering he kind of took over as the 1A in Boston, and then in the playoffs was the best goalie in the entire league outside of maybe Igor Shesterkin, but he still had better numbers. He had a .933 save percentage. He was fantastic. I think Boston should lock him up and will lock him up on like an 8-year, $8 million deal. Will he get the same deal as Ilya Sorokin? I think that's about the ballpark. Now, when looking at it, he's going to come to the table and say, I was better than Ilya Sorokin this year, but Sorokin signed his deal over the summer after finishing second in the goddamn Vezina in the year prior, having a .925 save percentage. So I don't think he has exactly the track record as a starter to get that 8 years, 8.25. And with Boston, they seemingly always lock guys in. They're able to sign guys for pretty cheap. Charlie McAvoy was a legit top 10, top 5 defenseman, got him for $9.5 million long term. Pasta's deal, even in the moment, we were like 11.25. That's really nothing for a guy that's a legit top 10 player in the entire NHL. So I think on an open market, he would get 8 years, $9 million, 9.25. But I think Boston's going to find a way to keep him pretty cost effective. But even with that, he'd still be the fourth highest paid active goalie in the entire NHL. Only Sorokin, Bobrovsky, and Vasilevsky would be paid more. So it's still a massive payday. But I think we would look at that, considering he is a younger guy. This would take him from the age of 25 to 32, 33. It would be a fantastic deal for both parties. Philip Hronek is one of the most interesting case studies when looking at restricted free agents, because in the first half of the season, 36 points in 42 games, we thought legitimately like an 8x8, get paid more than Quinn Hughes. And Quinn Hughes, when he got paid, was not the Quinn Hughes that we know today, but still, we thought he was in line for a massive raise. But back half of the season in the playoffs, not nearly the same guy offensively, especially offensively. He really cooled down offensively, but also the defensive cracks started to form. I'm still going to go with 5 years at $6.75 million. 5 years, $7 million. I still think he's going to get $7 million, considering he is a legit top pairing guy and is still pretty young at only 26 years old. Will that be with Vancouver? I don't have 1,000% confidence that is going to happen. I'd say it's 90% likely that Philip Hronek stays with the Vancouver Canucks. Could they end up trading him and opting to re-sign a Lindholm instead? If he gets traded, maybe that number would go up. But I think something around 5 years, not too much term in case they realize, oh, maybe he's not really the player that we thought that he was. But around 4 to 5 years at $7 million, he did lose a decent amount of money based on the back half of the season and come playoff time. We got Shane Pinto, the gambling god. Pinto balled out 27 points in 41 games. I think he gets a 3-year deal at around 4.5. I'll even go $5 million for Shane Pinto, which I think could be really good for the Ottawa Senators, considering Pinto is stepping into that second line center role now that Josh Norris is yet again going under shoulder surgery. I don't think he has a ton of leverage because, again, this guy was a liability, missed half the season for gambling, although I don't think he's going to be gambling again down the line. Still, with Shane Pinto, I think this would be a very good deal for the Senators. Bridge him. I'm not sure you can really afford to give him a 6 or 7 or 8 year deal. He probably wants $6.75 million. But based on what we saw in his rookie year from Shane Pinto, 35 points in 80 games, then this year takes a pretty big step once Norris goes down. Pinto is definitely trending in the right direction, and I think a 3x5 bridge deal will look like an absolute steal in 2 to 3 years for the Ottawa Senators. Rangers talk. Ryan Lindgren. What will Ryan Lindgren get? I think he's going to stay with the New York Rangers. I think he's going to sign a 4-year deal at $4.75 million. You look at these defensive defensemen, they don't get a ton of money, but they get paid pretty well. Ryan Lindgren, this year was probably his worst year yet in a contract year. Prior years, he was a very, very good defensive defenseman, but I think given the track record, given the comparables of other defensive defensemen that we have seen recently, Gavrikov's better than him, but he got $5.7 million. Ben Sherratt got $4.75 million. So I think Ryan Lindgren about falls in that same category of around $5 million. I'll go 4.75 over 4 years to be Adam Fox's partner for the next 4 years. Then we got Casey Mittelstadt. Casey Mittelstadt's an interesting one. He gets traded mid-season to the Colorado Avalanche. I'm going to go a 5-year deal at $6.25 million. Colorado, it's going to be an interesting offseason, considering are they accounting for Landeskog to come back? Or are they going to trade Valerie Nichushkin? This would basically be, if they're getting rid of Nichushkin, that money just goes straight to Casey Mittelstadt. He was a very good player for Colorado this year, as well as Buffalo before he got traded. 57 points. Last year, 59 points. He's a solid, maybe low-end second-line center for an actual playoff team. Overall, a solid second-line center. So I think $6.25 million for a guy that's only 25 years old. You get him on a 5-year deal. You get him for your entire prime. I think that would be a pretty solid deal for Colorado, and Casey Mittelstadt gets some stability after being traded and being in trade rumors for like a full year, and he makes Colorado his longtime home for at least the next 5 years. And then lastly, Seth Jarvis, 33 goals, 34 assists, 67 points this year. I'm going to go with an 8x8. I think they lock him up at a pretty cost-controlled contract. You look at it, that'd be around what Svechnikov gets. I believe Svechnikov's 7.875. I don't think he's going to come close to Sebastian Aho, given Sebastian Aho's track record. In fact, he only gets 9.75. So I think it's definitely going to be less than 8.5. I think Carolina takes care of their guys well in terms of getting them at pretty low cap hits. And I think Seth Jarvis is already like a borderline $8 million player. I think they're going to try to sign him long term. And also Jake Gensel, I think, is only going to come in at like $8.75 million if he signs long-term in Carolina. So I don't think Seth Jarvis has a ton of leverage in terms of the Carolina Hurricanes. So an 8-year deal at $8 million. But yeah, those are my contract predictions for the top 15 restricted free agents this summer. Drop some other restricted free agents that you want me to predict, and I'll give you a rough estimate. I think those were the 15 best guys. I don't really think I'm missing anybody glaring. Elias Pettersson already re-signed. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Should I do this with unrestricted free agents? And yeah, Cup preview tomorrow, then bunch more offseason draft stuff. It's crazy. Month of June is crazy because we got the Stanley Cup final, but the offseason starts like it's like the Monday. It could be Game 7, the final day on that Monday, and then the draft's the following Friday. Everything is going on. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'll be seeing you in the next one.